Do not think I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. Matthew chapter 10, verse 34. Wait, hold on. Did Jesus just say he didn't come to bring peace? Well, we're cooked, guys. Jesus is a bad guy and Christianity is false. I am sorry. See, that's the line of logic that a lot of people that pick this verse out of context follow. If you actually took time to read into the context, the other translations, and the true meaning behind what Jesus is saying here, you'd come to discover that it's one of the most profound things that he ever said in the Gospels. Jesus came to separate good deeds and wrongdoing, and he came so that people would no longer reject God. But alas, he knew that people would still reject him regardless of any of the miracles and proof that he performed. However, this is obviously going to happen when you come dividing truth and error and going against Jewish tradition. You're going to get a lot of backlash and rejection. But Jesus obviously knew that. What else is significant about this passage, before we read into it a little more, is that Jesus is preparing his disciples to go out and preach the word. So this is one of the last things he says to them before they go off. He's telling them about the nature of truth. The truth exists, and there is only one truth, but the problem is that not everybody likes it. Jesus is using the imagery of a sword to paint this picture, that telling the truth is going to be divisive. But we typically think of the sword as a weapon, of something that does not spread peace, but rather something that spreads violence and despair and harm. See, the word sword is actually never used. It's just the closest word to the translation, apparently. See, the word used in the actual Greek manuscripts is machaira, which is a big knife used to separate different cuts of meat. And just with that little bit of context, we can see exactly what Jesus meant. Again, it was to be divisive. It was to be the knife that separates the different cuts of people, the people that reject him and want to live in sin, and the people that accept him and want to be on the path to righteousness and the path to life. He was talking about how he came to be the blade that divided good and evil, sin and righteousness, truth and error, and in turn, that obviously created a lot of division. The rest of the verse continues, "For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and a person's enemies will be those of his own household." And that's Matthew chapter 10, verses 35 to 36. This further emphasizes how profound these teachings are. See, Jesus isn't calling us to violence or anything against our fellow neighbor, our most closest loved ones. Instead, he's talking about how profound his message is. See, not everybody wants the truth. A lot of people want to reject the true ultimate good so that they can gratify the flesh in the moment, so that they can pursue evil, even if it might feel good right now. But the people that truly understand that dying to yourself, bearing your cross every day, and rejecting your flesh is the only path to true joy and true life. Jesus knows that some people are always going to claim what's wrong is right, what's bad is actually good, and that has rung true even today. The true meaning is that Jesus does not want to make us enemies. Jesus knows the enemy is sin, and guess what we all do? Sin. Every day we sin, and so do our loved ones, so do our closest friends and relatives. That means that sin is among all of us, and if we listen to our closest loved ones, if we prioritize them over God, that means that we're going to fall into sin. If we care about them more than God, if we listen to them more than God, we're just going to fall. We need to follow the path to life. And that means that sometimes we have to be divided against our closest loved ones in the name of Jesus. If a household does not have Jesus' authority over everything, then it's going to fall. No human being is perfect, and Jesus is simply telling the truth. The problem is that not everybody can like or handle the truth. He's never actually calling us to violence. Rather, he's telling us that his word, his way of life, is divisive because people's flesh want that pleasure. They want that sin. And Jesus is calling us to learn how to deny that element of our humanity. And it's extremely difficult. Not everyone wants to do it. They'll find every reason under the sun to reject Jesus despite him being provably and observably perfect. The sword, or machaira, is used to paint a profound metaphor about how divisive Jesus' word is. And it's also used to paint the picture that those who follow Christ and those who reject Christ will be divided on earth, and they will be divided in the afterlife. See, without God, life is pure chaos. People use morally relativistic stances to determine what's right and wrong. But see, the problem is that us human beings, we can rationalize anything. We can go about our day and say, oh, that was fine. Oh, that's fine. Oh, it's cool if I just do this. If we don't have divine, steadfast, and permanent authority, We are our own gods, and that gets us absolutely nowhere. There is absolutely no worldview that gives us life like Christianity, like following Jesus. If we try to take over ourselves, we are simply imperfect. We are simply influenced by the flesh. There is no possible way that humanity can do it as perfectly as Jesus and God did it. You can try to follow your own lead all day long. You can try to follow someone else's lead that you respect all day long. But at the end of the day, if God isn't above everything, then you're bound to fall into sin. That's why it's important as Christians, surround yourself with godly people. Lead your non-believing friends closer to Christ every day by living out the word, by being a living example of what Jesus can do in your life. An atheistic, agnostic, or some other worldview doesn't accomplish what believing in God does, because you're making yourself your own God. And us as humans, we're imperfect, we're flawed. It doesn't work. And unfortunately, people want to reject God because they think it's loony, they think it's far-fetched. They don't read into the Gospels, they don't look into Jesus' character. They want to gratify their own desires rather than deny themselves and follow a true path that leads to true joy. They let their joy and happiness hinge on things of this world that are impermanent and things that will ultimately let you down. Things like popularity, money, the approval of others. All those things disappear. Every single one of them. You know what doesn't disappear? And even the message I'm saying right now is going to be divisive. And that was Jesus' ultimate point. He's not calling us to violence. He's saying that the message is divisive. It's like a sharp blade that splits the world in two. God gave us free will, and that means we can choose to either accept Jesus' teachings and read into them and figure out the profound meanings behind them, or we can reject them and weaponize them against the faith out of context in a way that demonizes Christians. Which way do you want to pick? I would pick the way that leads to truth, not the way that is a lie. A universe without God is a universe without meaning. And if you don't have God in your life, if you're your own God, you're only leading yourself into destruction. Thanks for watching. Follow the call to Christ, defend the faith, and God bless.